This episode is sponsored by TicketBud, an event ticketing platform that's user-friendly for first-time organizers while powerful and flexible for large events. TicketBud has hosted over 4 million events worldwide, from live shows and festivals to hospitality, education, corporate, and community events. Event organizers love TicketBud's early payouts, as well as their all-inclusive access to all features and customer support with one low flat rate. Get a 20% discount for all your 2021 events by visiting ticketbud.com/GatherGeeks.
Are you
Okay, so we're gonna be at
Welcome to GatherGeeks, a podcast by BizBash, the place where people passionate about meetings and events come together. Here's your host, BizBash chairman and founder, David Adler.
Today we're bringing you live sessions from the first BizBash conference in the post-COVID era. We all gathered in Las Vegas recently and had some wonderful conversations and presentations, and we're really excited to share these with you, so take a listen. For this session, I'm going to be joined to see Anheuser-Busch's brand, Ronnie Yoked, is going to be joining us. Ronnie, how are you?
Hi.
How are you?
Good.
Good. We're going to get moving. How about that? So you're sitting in Brooklyn, New York, correct?
I'm actually in the city right now. I came to the office for this.
Oh my God, we rate. Oh my God. I wanted your own ring light at home and do the whole thing. Your lighting's spectacular. Oh. Ronnie, we had this incredible conversation the other day, and I want to recreate some of that because I really learned a lot, and you were unbelievable. And I wanted to talk about what your role is at Anheuser-Busch, and you also talked about how you came from Google. So it was like two different worlds completely. What do you do at Anheuser-Busch, and how did you get there?
Whew. Okay, I'm going to try to keep it short.
No, that's okay. We could be a therapy session too. I can help.
I've talked about my past enough in therapy.
This is cheap though. I won't charge you a thing.
Hi everyone out there that I can't see. So my name is Ronnie Yoked. I'm the head of experiential at Anheuser-Busch, and I oversee the strategy and execution of our experiential or experience plans across all of our brands. I have a team of amazing experiential marketers that report to the different brands and get to fulfill their brand strategy out in the real world with people, but also in the virtual space, as we learned to do very well over the pandemic. And prior to being at AB, and I've been at AB for 6.5 years almost, I was at Google for 2 years working on Google Glass, which was an incredible experience. And prior to that, I had a clothing line. And previous to that, I was a public school teacher in Brooklyn. So I've had quite a winding path, and not a traditional one, to end up at Anheuser-Busch, one of the largest CPG companies in the world. So wasn't necessarily where I thought I would be, but I feel really blessed that I am here and super excited to be talking to you all. I think, and I say this a lot, I think my team, we have probably the best job in the world and in the company for sure, getting to be tapped into culture and music and art and fashion and sports. And at the end of the day, create experiences for people that are hopefully unforgettable and that make their lives a little bit better. So super blessed.
Can you take us behind the scenes of your programs that you've been doing in 2019 and how it shifted with the pandemic? What was it like before? And what was your life like? I would assume you're going to a lot of things, you're executing a lot of things, you have strategy meetings, you're watching numbers all the time. What was that like? Take us behind the scenes.
Yeah, so of course, pre-pandemic, my team was very much about in real life experiential marketing. And so we were responsible for executing events that were in person, festivals, sporting event activations, our owned events or our proprietary platforms, which we have, which are wellness and festivals for Michelob Ultra, music for Bud Light, just an array of really incredible experiences that were traditionally in real life. However, we did dabble, of course, in digital because we all know that pre-pandemic, even then, there was a proliferation of the movement towards digital and people consuming a ton of content in the digital space. And so we were doing live streaming, we were creating content from a lot of our events, but we weren't doing it at the level, pace, or investment. And then, of course, come to March 2019, and in an instant, all of our plans changed, and feel very fortunate that we had leadership in our company and our CMO who said, you know what, like, we put people first at this company, and it is the centerpiece to everything we do. And so whatever plans we had before, they don't work for the moment. So what are the things that we can do? And we really looked at the world in kind of two ways. It was ideas for good and ideas for growth. And so we focused on what are things that are actually going to help the world right now. We're in the middle of a pandemic. So that's initiatives that we did with the Red Cross, initiatives to create more hand sanitizer. If you guys remember, there was a shortage of that at one point. And then the ideas for growth were leveraging our platforms that already existed or creating new ones to entertain people or to bring about things that were good for business, but also entertaining. And so we, luckily on the experiential side, had a ton of existing programs and platforms that we were able to parlay into the digital space. And then we created new ones where we saw white space or gaps. And we talked about this a little bit, David, last time we met. Just, this is a common quote that I say, but I think experiential marketers really are the Swiss Army knives of marketing. We have to dabble in really every part of the marketing 360 thing. And so because of that, we were exceptionally well positioned, where traditionally you might think the digital marketers would be the ones to take the lead on bringing everything virtual. But it was my team that was behind the scenes creating these incredible experiences, because we knew that it needed to be more than content. We knew that it needed to still be an experience. And so what we've established is the pandemic made us go from experiential marketing to experience marketing, where in real life is no longer a limiting factor for the team. And there really is this silver lining amongst all of the horrible challenges that we've all faced globally for the last year. The silver lining is that there's a sense of freedom, I think, that my team has now to be able to really choose what is the best avenue to create an experience and not be limited anymore that it has to be an in-person event. Could it be a hybrid? Could it be in person? Could it be fully virtual? And I think we also gain the respect to be able to make those decisions. And I think everybody across the marketing department has more comfort level now in doing that because of the pandemic.
You know, we talked earlier how event people in general terms, because they're so tied into the customers and the employees and the supply chain, we're more in touch with the world. And so that part of the respect was the C-suite people were turning to them and say, oh my God, what do we do? And you have the confidence to actually know what people, where people are, what they're doing. So it seems like it was really an interesting. Did the economics work well in terms of the year, or did it matter in terms of this last year? In terms of, did sales do better? There's
a lot of nuances to that question,
yes,
because obviously we're a CPG company and our business is a global business. In the US, we were fortunate that a lot of our business is in the off-premise, which was doing well during the pandemic, but globally, other markets were completely shut down in the on-premise, where the majority of their sales happen. And listen, our partners are on-premise accounts and festivals and all of these folks in sports music and bars and restaurants, in which they were suffering, and everybody took a hit, and we did as well. I think from a marketing perspective, I think that everything we do had to have ROI. So we had to test and learn very quickly. We're a company that's known for building the plane as we fly it. We get about 80% there, and then we just go, because speed is everything. And so I think we quickly learned what are the kind of goals or targets for virtual content and virtual experiences that we need to leverage based on the program. We focus a lot on total views, on average view time. We also are looking at first-party data collection, a lot of these things that just make us better moving forward. And so we created some established KPIs or benchmarks so that we could really evaluate our programs consistently and look at what's working and what's not working. And obviously a ton of digital metrics that historically we didn't use for XM events, CPM and total views and all of those things were not necessarily what we were looking for before, but they were the new benchmarks of success. So I think generally speaking, we found our groove. In an in real life world, we invest heavily in owned experiences and in rented experiences or sponsoring experiences, and each serve a different purpose, right? Owned experiences allow us to build brand equity. They're owned. We get to really develop and explain who we are as a brand. Rented experiences, we get to borrow equity from our partners, whether they be sports, music, etc. And there's scale, the scale that we usually can't reach in person because we're not going to fund a 75,000 person event, but our partners at a music festival will. During the pandemic, the strategy we took in general was really going at it on our own, because the investment to do it on our own had better ROI than to try to become a sponsor of a virtual experience and just become almost like an advertiser. So we really wanted to create content versus just being an advertisement. And so the strategy was really about owned during the pandemic. And I think you'll see as we start coming out, we'll go back to having a really strong mix of the two.
What are some of the examples of the owned franchises that you think are going to live on?
First of all, some owned franchises that we had pre-pandemic that will continue. Movement by Michelob Ultra is our wellness tour. Started in 2018. It was an in-person wellness event. We had large one-day festivals, smaller regional ones, and we even did some localized studio takeovers with Michelob Ultra. We brought that online. Ironically enough, pre-pandemic, we always talked about having a digital hub of workouts and content that was about making wellness fun. And the pandemic forced us to do it. And now you're going to see that stays. We actually have our amazing workout launching tomorrow with Becky G, who's just an amazing Mexican-American Latin superstar. So we're really excited about that. We had Dive Bar Tour, which is our music franchise for Bud Light for 5 years, become Dive Bar at Home edition. And then we quickly parlayed that into Bud Light Seltzer Sessions, which was a new platform that will continue to live on post-pandemic, because our focus for music is shifting to Bud Light Seltzer because of the target demographic that we're aiming for. Stella launched Sessions at Home, which was all around food and entertaining. And so that's a platform that will continue and is continuing as well. So there's a ton of things that were either extensions of things we did or adaptations, and then a few things that were brand new that we hope to see continue.
So in the new world, the events that you're going to sponsor, though, are they the same ones, or are you going to shift? Or I know that, or is it to the Super Bowls and things like that? Is it more traditional things and concerts?
Yeah, at the moment, our sponsorship strategy is staying the same. We are always looking at our sponsorship strategy and making decisions on as the business change, as our need states change, as our commercial priorities change. We're always looking at our sponsorship mix, but we still continue to be the largest sponsor of sports, and we still continue to sponsor a ton of music and food festivals. And then in our local and region teams and our wholesaler partners, they sponsor a ton of smaller, kind of more localized events. I think as we continue to look at what the future holds, we'll continue to adapt and change. At the moment, nothing drastic to share. And I think we're all super excited about festivals being announced and finally being able to get out there and be with the people and listen to music. Because as much as I say that we're so fortunate to have been able to do all of these virtual experiences, and I think there's a lot we're going to take with us, let's be real, like beer's place is during live music, is during live sporting events. It's a centerpiece of that experience of being with your friends, having a cold beer, or a cold seltzer, or a cold ready to drink beverage, and enjoying music or enjoying an experience. And so I think we're all looking forward for our product to be back in its rightful place.
Absolutely. So just before we had this interview, we had the guys from TikTok here. Has your strategy, has TikTok changed anything in terms of your thinking in terms of marketing?
Absolutely. And I'm not a digital lead in my company.
I saw you yesterday on your TikTok channel.
Yeah, I wish. You know what? Their algorithm is quite good. I've lost many of hours in the vortex of TikTok.
So how does it change you as a marketer?
I think the creator, like the micro influencer world, the creator concept, the short form content, like really changes the way we're approaching promotion of our events. And I'm just going to speak specifically about experiential. When we're looking at the traditional ways in which we used to promote, and now just the new ways that we're looking to promote, it's leveraging all of these voices of the people that are tapped into culture, that all of the young people are looking up to and wanting to hear what they have to say. They are influencers. And so that is influencer marketing, obviously has been here for a while, but it has really crescendoed. And I think we are for sure paying attention to that. And it's a part of all of our brand strategies. And it is a part of my team strategy when we're looking at how to build buzz. We always tap into influencers, and then we want them to be on the platform that they are most successful in and the most organic on. So whether that be Instagram, whether that be TikTok, etc. Obviously, we have limitations on TikTok because we're an alcohol company. And so we're not yet able to be there from an advertiser perspective because of the audience base. But I think they've for sure had an impact on how we look at promoting our events and experiences.
We have talked, I think we've said strategy about 100 times already today. For people that are in our business, what do you define as strategy, and how come people always confuse it with creativity and tactics? How do you, like, you have a team of people and you probably have to, address them sometimes. And also, how is strategy more permanent than everything else?
Yeah. So I think the beautiful thing at our company is that the XM people, they report to me, but they sit on the brands. And so really they're a dotted line in or a part of these brand teams. And so their number one task is to understand the brand architecture. What is the brand's purpose? What is the consumer target? What is the human truth? Who are they trying to speak to? Where are the gaps? What are the jobs we need to win in order to continue to grow? And so they need to understand that, and that should deliver or help them deliver a strategy on where we need to be experientially. What are the passion points? What are the places in which we can go and be, and thus speak to those consumers that we're trying to speak to, or associate ourselves in the places that we think will have a positive halo effect on the brand? So that's their number one thing, is you need to know what you're trying to achieve. What are the business objectives? Then they bring in their expertise and experiential and say, okay, now I know that I want to deliver X and this is how I'm going to do it. Then they bring in the kind of more tactical on how you put on an event. What's the best way to do it? What's the best ROI? How am I going to save money? What vendors to use? All of that stuff all becomes a part of it. And then now, how am I going to promote it? What's the right content I'm going to deliver? So once again, that Swiss Army knife of marketing.
Can you go down, take a couple of brands and give us the examples down that chain? You talked about passion points, and it's something where we talked earlier that you don't just say, oh, we're into music. There's a lot of research that goes into every one of these simple statements.
Yeah.
So give us a couple of your traditional brands and maybe a new brand, and just give us sort of an example of how simple the strategy is.
Yeah, listen.
Thinking.
Listen, I think there's a few easy examples. Michelob Ultra is like the fastest growing beer brand, and it is, from a kind of reasons to believe perspective, it's a 95 calorie beer with 2.5 carbs. It has been a beer brand that's been around for over 16 years, but the meetup of the trend of wellness and health and fitness and the existence of this beer came together and created this rocket ship that's really been unstoppable and incredible to be a part of. And because of knowing that the reasons to believe is that from a functional perspective, this beer is low cal, low carb. And so the people who drink it care about health and wellness. They want to still have a good time. They want to enjoy themselves. They want to have a beer, but they don't want to have to worry about the calories or carbs. You'll see that the entire brand's kind of purpose is around, it's only worth it if you could enjoy it. So all of that kind of hard work, all of that stuff to be fit, and you could still have a beer at the end of the day. So all of the properties and passion points in which you see us centered around are health and wellness. So movement came out of this desire to really reach the authentic people. Movement is our wellness platform, to reach and speak to not only the consumers that care about health and wellness, but also the industry. And so it's a two-pronged approach of really tapping into the tastemakers in the health and wellness industry and bringing them into the fold, making them believers of our brand, and then having them have influence on other people, and then really reaching authentic, real human beings that genuinely care about working out and taking care of themselves and having mental well-being, but also having a beer on a weekend at the end of the day, whatever. And so that's how we developed Movement with that in mind. When you look at Bud Light Seltzer, which is a newer seltzer brand underneath a very well-established brand like Bud Light, the target demo there is a younger 21 to 35-year-old multicultural consumer. And so there you're looking at what are the passion points that really move the younger millennial. And music is a huge influence on people, music and artists. And so therefore we align ourselves in that passion point in that space. So those are just a few examples. And obviously I could get deeper.
Yeah, I'm sure we can go talk about it all day. But every strategy seems like there's a platform underneath it to make it easier to manage Is that kind of the point?
It depends on the maturity of the brand, and without going too much into my own kind of strategic approach, it depends on the maturity of the brand, but in general, we create swim lanes, and we basically say each brand is going to have their own swim lane. So we're not all targeting the same consumer in the same programs. One brand will focus on NFL, but all of the rest of the brands can still be part of the NFL in some way. So we create some strong swim lanes, and then platforms really vary on the maturity of the brand. I think the more mature a brand is, the more we should just develop our own platforms that we put out, because it's really about building brand equity. Like I said, I think some of our newer brands, we like to affiliate more with some of those sponsored events just to get that scale.
How do you balance between quant and emotion in terms of ROI? How do you make people go, add the Maya Angelou piece and actually have a way to measure it? Because if people don't
it's like the one nut I can't crack is what we call return on experience, or ROE. It's very hard. We have, like I said, very consistent benchmarks that we use on in-person events and on virtual events, and we use those to guide us on success. But there's some things that are very hard to quantify, to your point. And I think we've done some brand lift studies. Those are a really great way for us to understand. And we're using net performer score a lot now. If you are going to recommend this to a friend, then I know that I've done my job well. So we're trying to use net performance score as like a baseline for something that, regardless if it's virtual or in person, we use that as a very easy question. On a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to recommend this event to a friend? That's one of the ways that we've been looking at quantifying it. But we've also done some longer brand lift studies that just take more time and give us more information. We don't do those here and there, but it's really hard to...
How have you, there's sometimes when you think it checks all the boxes and then it's a bomb. Have you...
Oh, I've never experienced a bomb.
Of course not. Like, what do we learn from the ones that we think are,
so
like,
much.
Can you say an example of one that you thought would be, that was brilliantly strategically done, it just didn't work?
I can't think of one offhand, but there's a ton of times where we invest a ton of money and we don't get the social conversation or the mentions that we're looking for. It doesn't break the internet. I think that there's, as I mentioned, there's certain things that are long-term brand building that are hard to show immediate success from. And I think we're constantly learning and shifting the way we approach things, again, based on what we're trying to achieve. And the one thing I can say is, before we set out to do anything, we have to know what is our business objective and what are our KPIs. Otherwise, we can't do it.
So are you the puller of the plug? If it's not, is that your job to say this is not working? Or is that, you look at it in the numbers and it says it, right?
It varies. I like to give my team the independence to own their projects and platforms and programs and really work collaboratively with the brand teams and let them come to decision making. Are there moments where I'm able to advise the team on shifts that they can make to make the program be better? Absolutely. Are there times in which we come to a collective agreement that maybe we don't need to be doing this and it's not the right? Yeah.
Move on. You started your career as a teacher, and it's always interesting to see the through line. What did you learn as a teacher that you're bringing to your marketing job and your management job today that we can learn from?
I would say, one, I'm a constant work in progress. We all are.
Oh, yeah.
I think there's a couple things. One, having the responsibility of 30 students' lives in your hands and knowing that the impact that you have on their lives, the kind of basis of a foundation of an education is going to have an impact on the rest of their lives. That responsibility is immense. And I had that responsibility at a pretty young age, and it was extremely emotionally taxing because I didn't take it lightly. And so it was extremely hard. And so because of that, I've realized that nothing is as hard or as challenging. And so it lets me have a little bit of levity in the way that I approach work today. Like, it's not the end of the world. Let's do the best job ever. But at the end of the day, we're very fortunate. And then additionally, I say this a lot, and we talked about this a little bit, David, is just that what I found as a teacher is it doesn't matter how good of a job I thought I did explaining the lesson or explaining the task. If 75% of my students didn't get it, then that is more of a reflection on me than it was on them. And so I try to take the same approach as a leader of a team, that I have high expectations and I expect them to learn fast, but I also understand that if there are things that are not clicking, that I can probably look internally and see if there's things that I can shift to help them and guide them more.
Okay, so we've been through this pandemic, you've had this great career at Google and all that. If you put on your crystal ball, what is marketing and going to be like going forward? How is it going to fundamentally shift and evolve as it normally does? Or do you see any seismic changes that are happening from your perch?
Oh, man.
That's a hard,
there's
no answer.
Question.
Yeah.
It's the $1 million question. I think that I still need to sit and observe what happens through 2022. 2022 for the experiential marketing perspective is going to be an insane year. And even this fall is going to be insane. I'm curious to see how we align budgets and priorities given the talk value, the kind of cultural moment of all of us coming together in real life. So I'm curious to see how that changes things. I definitely think we've all seen the transformation of digital being a priority, especially for my media team, being a huge shift in priorities. So I think the jury is still out, but I definitely see small changes. I think it's going to be cataclysmic. I think it's going to be a step function of things that kind of take us into the new space.
What are you looking for then? We don't know what behavior is going to be. We don't know how we're coming. We're really in this really unknown thing. What are the questions you're going to be asking your teams to figure this out?
I think one, we're already testing out, planning for these hybrid models of experiential marketing. So I think that'll be a huge lesson on what's the right approach by program, by brand. We're also looking at our partners to give us some insight into like how things are progressing. We're seeing tickets go on sale. We're seeing trends in music, trends in behavior. So those are the things we're looking for. We're just eating up all the insights. And as we go into our planning cycle for next year, those are the things that we use to develop our plans.
Do you think scarcity is going to be an important thing? With those concerts selling out in 5 minutes and these festivals, it seems like that people are going to be clamoring to get into things they can't get into.
Yeah, I think so. That's been a huge conversation driver here around, especially in music. I think we've seen it more because I haven't seen the same type of social conversation around tickets going on sale for sporting events and them selling out, or people. There's been some moments recently where festivals have gone on sale or tours have gone on sale, and it's been insane. So I definitely think that there's something interesting to jump on in terms of the scarcity. I'm curious to see how that continues to evolve, right? There's only so many top selling acts. There's only so many shows people can go to, so many festivals. So I'd like to see how long the intensity maintains itself. But I believe scarcity has been a tactic that existed pre-pandemic as well.
Yeah. But I think now it's even more intense because, and price is not going to be an object. It doesn't sound like everything's going to cost more. I'm not sure about beer, right. But I know that tickets to concerts are certainly festivals are going to go way up, and people are still paying the money. There's no issue with that.
It's going to be interesting because really our country has been impacted. There are people who profited from the pandemic, but there's a huge amount of people that did not and were suffering during the pandemic.
The equity issue is going to be
There's going to be a real equity issue, and I think that's something we think about as well. We want to make sure that we're creating experiences for everyone.
So you cannot be too, if it's just the high end, you got to make sure that you're not being too snobby about whatever you're doing. You got to be humble in this new world of marketing.
Yeah, and we do a lot of things that are free because we want everybody to experience them. And then there are other things that we sell tickets to, but our ticket prices are really fair. So I think a lot of people everybody has been impacted by the last year, but some people have been impacted more in harder ways than others. And so I think just continuing to be mindful of that as we look at what we're doing in our planning.
So the last question I have is a funny question, but I'm sure you have them in Brooklyn. Where are the Clydesdales going?
Oh man, the Clydesdales go everywhere. So they're not in Brooklyn. There's Clydesdales. They're in St. Louis. Those, if I die and get to come back as anything, it'll be a Clydesdales. The Clydesdale, they have great hours. They only can work a couple hours before they have to cool off and get maintained. They're incredible. They'll definitely be showing up at some baseball games as they always do. They'll definitely be showing up to surprise people at bars or in towns. They definitely will show up over the holidays. So they're everywhere, and I know the team is super excited to get them back out.
Can people request that they come to their events that even for free, or is it like the
You know what? That's a
Wienermobile?
great question. We definitely work with the team that manages the Clydesdales. It's our kind of beer heritage team, and we can make requests for them. And there's definitely a cost of operating, but I don't know about external people.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that those requests can be made, but I actually don't know the details on how much it costs or if it's free.
Do we see those kind of the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile and the Clydesdales? Are any of those, can you create those from scratch at this point, or is that sort of a thing of the past? You need that years and years of whatever.
I feel
don't
like
know.
the Clydesdales and Budweiser are like one of the most representational brands and things of America. I don't know how you recreate it, and if you do, it's going to take a long time.
A long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so you went from Google, which started in 2000, like something like that, to to Anheuser-Busch, which is hundreds of years old. And it sounds like you're bringing a lot of the new thinking to it. Was it a struggle to get people to think anew, or how do you break through to make experiential marketing something that people like really respect?
I have to say that I have been so pleasantly surprised at AB and so fortunate that I've had leadership, peers, mentors that have believed in me. And as long as I had a good idea or a good plan, that I was able to see it through. And then I feel really fortunate that my current boss and our head of marketing, Marcel Marcondes, are really visionaries and have a lot of guts to try things and create and take risks and challenges. It has not been as challenging as one would have expected. And I for sure expected it to be challenging because I'm not your typical AB person, but I have been so well treated and so blessed to be around such creative, thoughtful, and people and risk takers.
Well, I am so impressed with your dynamism, and you're a natural born leader, and that's what we need in this industry, and that you certainly seem to take joy in all of these experiences, which is half the battle. It's like you do it, you show it by leadership. You get excited about these events. It's just really great, and I'm proud
Very
that
nice of
you're
you to
on
say.
this, on our podcast today, on our show, and look forward to doing more stuff in the future. And you've been a delight, so thank you so much.
Thank you so much, David. I appreciate it. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you like what you're hearing, be sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or your favorite podcast app. We can be found on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Player FM, Google Play, and Pocket Cast. Be sure to leave us a rating and review. It helps others discover the GatherGeeks podcast. We'd also love to hear from you. You can leave feedback on Twitter at GatherGeeks or leave us an email, gathergeeks@bizbash.com. We hope you'll join us again for the next episode of GatherGeeks. Until then, gather on.